So just to begin, I think as most people in the room will know, in the last 50 or 60 years, we've seen a significant increase in international migration around the world, not just in Africa, but in all different parts of the world. And also, as we've heard from previous panels, it's been attributed to a wide range of different reasons, including the so-called globalizing the economy, cheaper and more accessible modes of transport, economic downturn, recession as we're seeing at the moment, and of course instability and political conflict as well. And as was also mentioned this morning and yesterday evening, this is increasingly going to be in response to environmental factors such as drought and climate change, accompanying food shortages and natural disaster. Of course, in this field, specifically around gender issues, we also hear quite a lot, as Lauren has just said, on human smuggling and trafficking, and specifically in relation to women, coercion in terms of labor and sex work and so forth. But personally, I've always really liked what the Global Commission on International Migration said in 2005 about gendered migration, which is also that migration can be very empowering for women. Women are able to move away from patriarchal and traditional societies in many respects. They can have increased access to education and skills development in destination countries, and can earn money and gain decision-making power and autonomy in their own lives as well.
And I think when we think about the question of perceived threats, and when we see other people as threats, and when we generate the language of threats, and when we generate often the unintended language of exclusion that goes along with the development of migration policies, we create other people as threats. And not the logical conclusion, but the conclusion of that is that we end up with people being attacked and killed for where they come from. And this country has a history of people being attacked and discriminated against because of what they look like. And I don't think we want to move in the region or in the continent to people being attacked and killed because of the passports that they hold or don't. So I think that that's where the perceived threat comes from.
This is a concluding panel that is going to help us reflect on how we can make Africa's security architecture fit for the new challenges. In the past 1 day and a bit, we have had a whole range of old and new information, I suspect. We've heard about factors such as institutional and systemic issues and opportunities. We have debated various levels of engagement as far as the nexus between conflict, natural resources, and climate change is concerned. We have heard of large expansion in the scope of threats that are more complex, new and old threats, weak states, the debate on weak institutions, the debate on natural resources offering opportunities but also challenges. But I think for a long time, particularly within the academia, these specific issues have been dealt with separately. And I think the challenge now is really to make that link between migration, climate change, resources, and conflict. And I think, in fact, this is not a choice that we have been given. The reality on the ground forces us to think in almost a multidisciplinary, in an interdisciplinary way, if in fact we are going to prefer solutions or options that are going to help this continent pick up from what is not just a financial crisis in my view, but the crisis of the failure of the development project. I think that is really the big question underlying this thing. For Africa, the current global crisis is exacerbated by 3 or 4 decades of the failure of this development project.
Now, what structures in the African peace and security architecture do we have, and are those structures suitable for dealing with these new challenges of climate change, resource management, etc.? Well, firstly, the conflict early warning system that has been established. The main orientation of the conflict early warning system is to detect fault lines mainly related to social unrest in countries on the continent, and social unrest that manifests itself in political conflict. So it's not really suited that much for dealing with flood and desertification and all sorts of other things. And I think there's room for improvement in the conflict early warning system, and it can be adapted more. So certainly there needs to be more resources put into allowing the African Union to develop it so that it becomes adapted to dealing with those new challenges. Now, it's not going to happen if some donor and some NGOs and civil society organizations actually go to the African Union and say, here's a proposal, this is what we intend to do. I mean, we've worked long enough with the African Union. It's not incompetency, it's just an overload of work. Currently, the African Union is having to deal with so many conflicts on the continent, and that conflict early warning system is basically focused on all of those conflicts. So unless we make a concerted effort to go there and say, look, let's adapt this for dealing with these new challenges, it's not going to happen.